Hi everyone, welcome to the Australasian College of Road Safety New South Wales Chapter Seminar on driver distraction and camera detected mobile phone use. We have two speakers today. We have Bernard Carlon, the Executive Director of the Centres for Road Safety and for Maritime Safety from the Transport for New South Wales, and we have Alexander Jannink, Managing Director of Acusensus. I'm the facilitator, Anna Chevalier, and I'm the College New South Wales Chapter Seminar Coordinator. So I'll be taking us through the slides today. First off, I'd like to thank a few people who have helped make today happen. Thanks to all of you for joining us for this seminar, to the presenters, Bernard and Alex, to the members of the New South Wales Chapter who have assisted with organising and promoting the seminar, and particularly to Mike Regan and Prasanna Prabhakaran, who ran the seminar series last year and have helped support this year's seminar, and to Mick Timms, who made the initial contact with one of our presenters, Alex. Thanks to ARB for providing the GoToWebinar platform for us to use and for promoting the seminar. And we're lucky today to have Isabella and Neva with us from ARB to provide support to ensure the seminar runs smoothly. So if you have any tech issues, and you pop it up in the chat, they will help deal with those issues. Initially, I'm going to introduce the chair of the college from the New South Wales chapter. Next slide, please, Isabella. Duncan McRae. I'll hand over to you, Duncan, for a few words to introduce the seminar.
Thank you, Anna. On behalf of the college, again, I'd like to welcome all our attendees today. It's a bit of a record for the college. We have over 307 exactly to be precise, people listening in today, so that's amazing. A couple of things I want to mention. The college has a practice of giving free membership to attendees at our seminars. So for 3 months, you will be able to get all the college newsletters and information from the college, so that'll be going out to you. And also, it's encouraged you to look at some of the work the college does, both in a New South Wales context and also a national context. We have membership across Australia and internationally, so we'd encourage you to look into that. I think going back to our 307, I think that's an indicator of the interest in this particular topic. It is just driver distraction is a significant road safety issue for us in Australia and internationally. And I think the other part of our wide attendance today is just the quality of the speakers. So I'm really looking forward to Bern and Alexander presenting today and helping us understand some of the issues and that they've come across during the development of these strategies. I'll hand you back to Anna now to go through the housekeeping, but thanks again and welcome to the seminar. Thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. That's great news about the 3-month subscription. That newsletter is contains such a wealth of information every time it comes out. So I hope the listeners who aren't already members of the organisation will enjoy receiving that. Next slide, please, Isabella. So I'm going to go through a few quick housekeeping things, and then I'll introduce our speakers and we'll get started. Again, thanks to Isabella and Neva, who are giving us their support today. Next slide, please. The webinar is 60 minutes long. As you know, it includes a question time at the end of about 10 to 15 minutes. The webinar will be recorded and we will send out, it will be hosted on the Australasian College of Road Safety website, and we'll send out a link to that after the webinar, probably in a few days. Next slide, please. All of you who are listening in today are on mute, but you may ask questions so that we can answer them at the end. To do so, you go to the left-hand side in the GoToWebinar platform. There's a little drop-down box for questions. You can type your question in there where it says enter a question for staff and hit enter or the send underneath, and the question will come through and we'll be able to see them. Next slide, please. So before we kick off, it's my pleasure to welcome our two presenters, both great presenters. We have Bernard Carlon, talking about this very topical subject of driver distraction and camera detected mobile phone use. So to briefly introduce them both, Bernard Carlon is the Executive Director of the Centres for Road Safety and Maritime Safety in Transport for New South Wales. Bernard joined Transport for New South Wales in 2012 as the Director, Strategy and Policy, and has led the Centre for Road Safety since 2015 and Maritime Safety since 2016. He's a board member of ANCAP and a member of the Austroads National Road Safety Task Force. Bernard has held senior state government roles in policy, regulation, communications, and program delivery across the health, justice, environment, and transport portfolios. He's charged with leading the road safety and maritime safety strategies to move the trauma on our roads and waterways towards zero, something I know is dear to all our hearts. And to introduce Alexander Jannink. Alexander is a passionate advocate for road safety, focusing on interventions that improve road user behaviour. He's the Managing Director of Acusensus, an innovative road safety technology provider which delivered the world's first distracted driving enforcement camera solution deployed by the New South Wales Government. Acusensus heads up. Prior to founding Acusensus, Alexander was the Head of Research and Development for Redflex traffic systems and has developed camera enforcement and collision prevention technology that has been deployed in over 30 countries. So together, Bernard and Alex bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in this area to us, and we're especially grateful for them agreeing to speak today and share that information with us. Thank you to you both. Before I kick off Bernard starting his talk, just a quick reminder, as members of the audience, please don't forget to shoot me any questions that you have as they deliver their presentation. Next slide, please, Isabella. And over to you, Bernard. Thanks, our first presenter.
Great, thanks very much for that, Anna, and thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview and update on the mobile phone detection camera program. New South Wales unrestricted licence holders are permitted to use their mobile phones for audio calls and music functions, provided that the phone is in a secure cradle and can be operated without, on Bluetooth as well. When secured in a cradle, mobile phones can also be used as a driver's aid, so for navigation. Provisional learner drivers are not permitted to use mobile phones at all while driving in New South Wales. And with the introduction of this mobile phone camera detection program, those core rules have not changed. But we did, at the time of introducing legislation, have recently made other changes to mobile phone use, including allowing drivers, when asked by a police officer to furnish their licence, to provide it their digital driver licence on their phone, so holding their phone for that purpose, and also to facilitate contactless transactions, so at drive-through restaurants, those sort of areas, that you are able now to use your phone for those contactless transactions with your mobile phone. Now, next slide, thanks. So in New South Wales since 2012, there have been at least 198 casualty crashes involving a driver or rider using a handheld mobile phone, resulting in 18 deaths and 267 injuries. 15 of those deaths and 128 injuries occurred in country New South Wales, based on our preliminary data up to June 2020. But we do know that mobile phone use in crashes is underreported because of a difficulty in obtaining evidence at crash scenes, and support for the cameras to detect illegal mobile phone use actually during the period of our investigation for technology increased from 74% of a community to 80% of a community by May 2019 during the pilot period. In our Australian Government survey of community attitudes towards road safety, 79% of the community agree that talking on a mobile phone while driving increases crash risk, and the NRMA survey of their members found that almost 3/4 ranked illegal mobile phone use behind the wheel as their biggest road safety concern. A key principle of the program is actually to target any form of illegal handheld mobile phone use. Next slide, thanks. So this all started in the Road Safety Plan in 2018, which was launched, where a commitment to implement legislative changes to enable camera-based technologies to enforce mobile phone offences. At that time, there was no technology that was operating anywhere in the world. And a literature scan indicated that we were in new territory in terms of designing an automated enforcement program. We actually did introduce legislation, which in April of 2018 came into effect in July 2018. And the Transport Administration Act was amended so that fines would also be directed to the Community Road Safety Fund by law. This is a pretty novel thing because very rarely does legislation get put in place for enforcement activity and then we go to find the technology, but it was a signal to the market that in New South Wales we were serious about tackling this problem. And we released a registration of interest to the market in April 2018 to identify potential providers worldwide. 24 technology companies responded with possible solutions, either already in development or capability to develop. And in July 2018, proposals were sought through an RFP for a demonstration and assessment of the technology. Next slide, thanks. The pilot essentially was done at a test facility on the M4 motorway in Western Sydney, which was used to validate the claims of the shortlisted 3 companies that actually had viable systems that they proffered for testing. Each supplier was allocated a lane to monitor to prove fundamental capability in real world conditions, including providing a clear photographic evidence of an offence, no matter what the speed of the vehicle that was travelling, to capture the offence in all types of vehicles, from trucks to small cars, to protect the privacy and confidentiality of the information, and to meet all the appropriate work, health and safety requirements. And we deployed a high definition video camera and radar unit to independently validate the data provided by the proponents during this testing period. And there was significant variation in the performance of the 3 systems. The best performing solution at the time was Acusensus, was selected for then a non-enforcing pilot of both fixed and transportable versions of the same camera system between January and June 2019. Next slide, thanks. That pilot ran from January to June, as I said, at 2 fixed sites and 6 locations where the transportable or trailer mounted version was tested. In that period, 8.5 million vehicles were checked. More greater than 100,000 instances of illegal mobile phone use was detected. About 1.2% of all vehicles checked were non-compliant. And consistent illegal use happened across all lanes that were being screened. The system was found to operate reliably in all weather conditions, day and night. And the camera system meets the technical requirements and is approved and then gazetted for enforcement purposes under the law. It provided a high level of confidence in the technology, and the cameras operated reliably in the transportable units using solar, battery and generator power. Next slide, thanks. The system includes high resolution cameras, a flash and a radar unit. Each sighting produced by the system contains 3 still images. Next slide. Image A shows a vehicle in the context of the carriageway to enable vehicle identification. So this is part of the evidence that's required, is that there must be identification of a vehicle on a road, and the registration of the vehicle needs to be identified. Next slide. In image B, you can see this shallow angle, which can capture evidence of the handheld phone use to the ear. And next slide. And image C is the steep angle to provide a clear view of the mobile phone use, which predominantly is texting sort of behaviour and other behaviours where people are holding the phone down, as well as clearly talking on their phone. Next slide, thanks. The artificial intelligence, AI, has been developed using machine learning based on tens of thousands of images from the fixed and transportable pilot sites. At the time, images were identified as offences or non-offences through human review, and the system then learnt to look for patterns of those images. Training data is random to prevent any bias, and the system identifies illegal phone use in all vehicle types. The regular audits by Transport for New South Wales will be ongoing to ensure that the artificial intelligence is operating as intended. And the AI is likely to improve over time as well. The images that may show an offence are referred for human review. So no infringements are ever issued based on the system itself. The penalty notice will not be issued until an authorised officer has undertaken a final review and has confirmed that the evidence within the image actually is illegal mobile phone use. Next slide, thanks. Privacy and security is clearly one of the key issues that needed to be managed in this process, and a key feature of the testing and piloting phases was to examine those privacy and security issues. All New South Wales camera enforcement systems, red light, speed cameras, are subject to strict data security, staff probity and privacy requirements. All privacy impact assessments were undertaken that were required to inform the pilot, and we've had ongoing consultation with the New South Wales Privacy Commissioner during the development of the program. We have a legal basis for data collection, and the community is aware of and supports the program. From a privacy and security perspective, roadside equipment is secured and monitored with electronic cyber key, which provides auditable and time-limited access. Contractor personnel are subject to criminal history checks and authorisation processes. Artificial intelligence process limits human review, so around 90% of the images are never viewed by the human eye and deleted and irretrievably deleted from the system. And the potential offences image for the first review is cropped, showing a driver only, cannot identify the vehicle. And this reviewed within 72 hours, and compliant images then progressed in terms of prosecution. Final adjudication of images, there's a pixelation of passengers, again restricting access to personal information, and an audit trail for all access to the images, and also all actions that are taken and decisions by reviewers is maintained throughout the whole process. Next slide, thanks. So in terms of the program communications, it's been a top priority to ensure the community is aware of the program and the rules that apply. During the warning letter period, there was a focus on know the rules, with a Google search returning our mobile phone rules page at the top of their search results. It was very popular campaign, lots of engagement from the community, both on social media, and we actually, of course, did a TVC and a mainstream advertising campaign. And when we transitioned to enforcement, the campaign was updated with the Stop It or Cop It logo as well, so that people were aware that we were now in enforcement mode. A total of 326 signs, including 22 fixed permanent signs and 304 variable message signs, are being used as part of the broad awareness of the fact that the cameras are operating right across the whole of the road network. And there's a strong web and social media content as well. Next slide, thanks. In order not to jam up your reception of this, there was a television commercial produced for the warning letter and the enforcement phases, and I'll leave you to have a look at that online or when you get to actually view the presentation later, and I'll just move on. So the next slide, thanks. The program rollout, so the program size, essentially 135 million vehicle checks, will materially increase the probability of an offending driver being detected. There's a rate of about 20 checks per registered vehicle in New South Wales, and we expect close to 100% of vehicles to be checked multiple times a year. Fixed cameras are typically being mounted on existing structures in high volume roads and achieve a high base level of monitoring and enforcement. The transportable cameras maximise the unpredictability and enforced statewide and operate without fixed infrastructure and increase the anywhere, anytime deterrence. Rollout is currently on track with 18 cameras currently operating across the network, about half in fixed and half in transportable. And it's expected that around 45 cameras will be required to achieve the desired level of vehicle checks as we ramp up over the 4-year program. Next slide, thanks. We also modelled the benefits of the program with regard to the trauma, noting that the reporting of trauma in the use of mobile phone as a contributing factor to crashes, we believe is significantly underreported. But the Monash University Accident Research Centre provided independent modelling on the potential benefits of the program, modelling based on the best available research, known benefits of comparable camera programs, and evidence based on assumptions about the involvement of mobile phones in crashes beyond New South Wales crash data. Regarding the signage at camera sites, MUAC reported that all other things being equal, if the camera locations were overtly signed, ergo having a sign at the location of the camera itself, it would take 5 years to achieve the same benefits that a program that does not use overt signage would achieve over 1 year. And certainly we've had a large presence right across the network in warning motorists that the system is operating on the road network. And we believe that we're already seeing indications of that having an effect in terms of its general deterrence rather than the specific signage at the location of the camera. In terms of fatal and serious injury crashes, the independent modelling estimates that the program will contribute to a reduction of approximately 100 fatal and serious injury crashes over the 5-year period. Next slide, thanks. So following the 3-month warning letter period, penalties have been issued since the beginning of March 2020. The program has been supported by ongoing data monitoring. An evaluation working group, including key program stakeholders, has been established to support the design and delivery, monitoring and evaluation activities. Stakeholders including Revenue New South Wales, BOSCA and the New South Wales Police. Work's underway to design the key evaluation processes, but the initial evaluation design and process evaluations being designed for 2021-2022. We're continuing to monitor the outcomes of the program. We're looking at the final evaluation outcomes in 24-25. However, you can see from the data from the first 3 months of operation that during the pilot period, 8.5 million vehicles were checked, and we had a non-compliance rate of 1.22. During the warning letter period, that non-compliance rate dropped to 0.34. And now during the enforcement period up to the end of June, that's dropped to 0.24. And we also indicate that the general deterrent effect of the cameras, particularly in the transportable units, has seen that that's reflected across the network, that we're seeing a general deterrence effect from the program and a reduction in the illegal use of mobile phones as a result. So those early indications are very positive. Next slide, thanks. So always good to reflect on some of the lessons learned. And while this is a groundbreaking world first initiative in terms of automated detection of mobile phone offences, the program mirrors the best practice and legal framework from existing camera enforcement programs in New South Wales, which has helped us in doing a fairly rapid development of legislation, market sourcing for technology, and then implementation. Not many programs of this scale and complexity have been delivered in such a fast time frame, but we've lent very heavily on the depth of experience that we've had in delivering other automated enforcement programs in New South Wales. The importance of early engagement on issues such as privacy to ensure legal compliance and alignment with best practice. The procurement approach was designed to stimulate industry innovation and allow for flexibility to extend the engagement of the vendor beyond the pilot into the operational program. So we've been very flexible and innovative in the way in which we've actually developed the procurement approach as well. Independent modelling was pivotal in influencing the new policy vision regarding signage and the general deterrent effect. And in the part of the future direction, we'll be finalising the rollout of this mobile camera detection program. We're committed to finding new and innovative ways to tackle emerging and persistent road safety challenges, and know that technology will continue to play an important role in achieving those positive safety outcomes for the future. Further life-saving initiatives will be delivered under our current and future road safety plans. And I think that's my time. Thanks, Anna.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bernard, for such a engaging presentation. It was particularly interesting seeing all that information about just how rigorous the system is in upholding the infringements it does detect, and the model benefits of the new artwork on the differences between overt and covert signage. Thank you very much. And moving on to our second presenter, over to you. Thanks so much, Alex.
Thank you very much. Thanks for attending today, everybody. Next slide, please. So it's fantastic to hear Bernard take us through the program implemented in New South Wales. He and his team have really trailblazed in this space, recognising the need and moving on to implement real change. And it's no small feat. What we find as we talk with road safety decision makers across the world is that everybody wants to go second, but nobody wants to go first in adopting a new enforcement program. And New South Wales has really taken the lead for the globe on this and demonstrated what is possible, setting a template for others to follow. Next slide, please. Today, I thought I'd give you a little bit of backstory. I intended to cover why we founded Acusensus and then walk through the development hurdles we faced in designing a solution to enable behavioural change for distracted driving. I'll describe the technology briefly before moving on to what else the solution could be used for to address a multitude of road safety challenges. I'll finish up with what we felt were the key learnings from the programs implemented to date, I guess from the vendor perspective, and what we want to tackle next in the road safety space. Next slide. I started working in road safety in 2006, developing enforcement camera systems for reflex traffic systems, a major supplier of camera technology in Australia and overseas. By the end of my time there, I headed up research and development for the company, and I was fortunate to work with some exceptional colleagues at Redflex. One of the best was my friend James Rapley. And while I've always been proud to work in road safety, at the end of 2013, the road trauma problem became deeply personal for me. On the morning of the 23rd of December, I received a phone call that James had been hit and killed. He'd been riding in a bike lane. A driver had veered into him at speed, and I was told that that driver was impaired and was texting. Between 2014 and 2017, I noticed that road safety was objectively worsening across multiple developed world nations, and I was pretty convinced that poor driver behaviour, particularly around the increasing prevalence of mobile phone use, was really leading that, and that it was a big unaddressed cause of road trauma. I founded Acusensus to provide a solution to this problem, and I was very fortunate to be matched with my seed investor and co-founder, Ravan Mirchandani, that was facilitated by Austrade in 2017. Next slide, please. So despite my background in camera enforcement, we did really start with a blank canvas. So how could we provide an effective and credible solution to reduce this problem? And one that could be implemented quickly and across the driving population. And it did keep coming back to enforcement as the only viable short-term option. We know that widespread anywhere, anytime enforcement works to change driver behaviour. And we see this from the success of drink driving and speed enforcement campaigns. And I was absolutely certain that it would work for distracted driving too. Thankfully, we now know it to be true from the New South Wales program, as Bernard just presented on. And that the enforcement program, despite being in its infancy, is already shifting driver behaviour. with about a third of the rate of offences now as compared to when the pilot program started. From here started the technical challenges. How pervasive was the problem? Would a fixed camera actually catch many people using a phone at speed? How could you get good enough evidence to prosecute in court? How could you even work out efficiently whether a driver was using the phone or not? Next slide, please. So, do a quick rundown of some time frames. Developing new camera enforcement technology is not cheap and it's not easy. And so you're going to be in for a very long journey to convince government departments to adopt such technology. So right from the start, we had to secure several years of funding. And as I mentioned earlier, I was very fortunate to have the perfect partner in Indian industrial manufacturer, Door Powertron. So together we've been working hard to improve road safety in India as well. But that's a story for a different day. And I'm really grateful to Austrade for facilitating that partnership in 2017. Through 2018, we tested and developed the key windshield penetration and artificial intelligence intellectual property. New South Wales also changed their legislation to enable camera enforcement that year, and they went to the market for solution providers, of which we were one of the 23 or 24 in the RFP process. And through that rigorous evaluation and head-to-head testing, the Acusensus solution was selected for deployment in New South Wales, with the pilot occurring in 2019, and by the end of 2019, the full enforcement program commencing. Through 2020, as the New South Wales program has been expanding, we've seen both Queensland and Victoria begin pilots of this technology, and Queensland have already made changes to their legislation to enable enforcement. Next slide, please. So I'll turn now to the technology challenges of this camera enforcement solution. The first major challenge is to take a clear photograph through a windshield at high resolution. The photo needs to be taken at any speed and it has to be taken at the right angles to see driver phone use behaviour. And these really high camera angles lead to very high motion blur, so it necessitates an exceptionally fast exposure. However, the biggest problem is to remove glare during the daytime. If you think about what you see when you walk down the street, and if you try to look through car windows, you'll generally see a lot of clouds, a lot of reflections, and not much of the driver inside. So we had to develop custom flash hardware to be able to solve this problem reliably, in conjunction with specialized lensing and camera technology. While I don't intend to go through exactly how we've done it today, what I will say is that everybody says to me, that problem's easy to solve, just use a polarizer. But my view on that is that it isn't easy to solve and you can't just use a polarizer. Next slide, please. So the next challenge was to work out how the driver was using a phone. You can't use radio signal detection because the most dangerous offences of texting and viewing don't necessarily involve data transmission. While it's really easy to say now in 2020 that you can solve this problem with AI and machine learning, in 2018, that was far less clear. Back then, nobody had done this before. I mean, I was pretty convinced you'd be able to train an AI to help, but I had no idea how well it would work. We developed and tested several models and approaches before finding the one that we could rely on for this task. There's a really great video online of our CTO, Chris, showing images to our AI system, and then the system finds the driver and classifies the chance of phone use. So I encourage you to take a look at our website if you haven't seen that yet. Next slide, please. The next challenge, as Bernard alluded to really well, was that it's really, really important to ensure that the public is on board with the enforcement programs, and that means upholding the absolute highest levels of integrity with respect to data privacy and data security. The New South Wales government was really good at holding this in the highest regard, and working together on a technical approach, we could ensure that the systems retain the least amount of data for the least amount of time. And the solution that we've come up with, and which I'm quite proud of compared with the other kinds of enforcement camera approaches, is that it's effectively Fort Knox. And it's a solution which even we as Acusensus don't hold the keys to. We can't even open our own incident files, only the authority can do that. And along with Transport for New South Wales, the solution has an automated pixelation feature. So that any human review of these evidence packages shows only the driver unless that infringement escalates to be challenged in court. A really key challenge to solve, though, was how do you train and improve an AI system in which you don't actually hold the data that you need to train that system with? And so this took some significant effort in the AI design, but it leads to a system in which we can't leak image data as members of the public because we never use image data as members of the public. We don't store or hold that. Some other really key features developed include the independent audit functionality, so that the authority can at any point in time evaluate the AI and human review processes without Acusensus even knowing that that audit is occurring. And so that verifies the detection and the review performance. Next slide, please. So the final major challenge area was providing anywhere, anytime deterrence. So we really felt that supplying a solution that could be deployed across the road network was key to changing driver behaviours. And so taking some inspiration from the Queensland Speed Enforcement Trailer Program, we developed a trailer-based platform to mount our equipment onto and still get all the right camera angles and things. And then that trailer platform can be deployed for any length of time with both solar and generator power on board. And then it also includes some other features like continuously monitored security systems to discourage vandalism. So as Bernard said, about half of the cameras in New South Wales currently operating are these transportable types that go right throughout the state. Next slide, please. So I guess to summarise the overall solution, what we've designed is effectively a sophisticated version of a speed camera. It can be deployed anywhere across the road network on a trailer-based platform, or it can be deployed on fixed infrastructure, such as variable message signs or gantries. Cameras take clear, high-resolution photos through the windshield of each vehicle that passes by the system. These photos are taken for vehicles at any speed up to 300k an hour. And the key innovation is the technology that removes glare from the windshield to enable the capture of prosecutable evidence day or night. In real time by the roadside, a machine learning artificial intelligence-based system analyzes each image to first find the driver and then calculate the likelihood that that driver is illegally touching a mobile phone. Images that the system believes are highly likely to show phone use are sent to a human reviewer to confirm the driver is touching phone in a manner that the authority wants to prosecute. And then the privacy and the security of the data is taken very seriously. The images are deleted as soon as they're no longer of any use in a compliance action where the network's extremely locked off, and only the authority holds the credentials to be able to view the data captured. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the kind of evidence that the solution generates. You see a clear photo through the windshield of a driver manipulating a phone, in this case with both hands. And this is by no means uncommon. For about 1 in 20 offences, the driver is displaying this 2 hands on phone, 0 hands on steering wheel behaviour. And as you can see from the data block highlighted in the top right of this slide, this gentleman is conducting this behaviour at 84 kilometres per hour. Next slide, please. So we spent a lot of time on the New South Wales program. It is the first in the world, and Centre for Road Safety recognised the danger of the mobile phone use in their road safety plan, and there was strong political will to find solutions to the problem. And we know from the rollout that the prevalence of phone user behaviour has been steadily dropping, with the rates now being less than 0.5% of drivers passing a point using their phones compared with over 1% before. Perhaps coincidentally, we also note that New South Wales is having a better year than many other jurisdictions with respect to road casualty numbers, so I really don't want to make that link at this point. So I'll move on to the other capabilities that the solution can be used for. Next slide, please. So looking at the broader capabilities of the technology, at its heart, the solution is a very sophisticated speed camera, basically. So it's able to detect simultaneously distracted driving infractions, occupants not wearing a seatbelt, license plates for hot list vehicle detection, or for point-to-point average speed detection, and also point speed detection using radar enforcement. So while our mission is to solve the distracted driving problem, we think that these added capabilities will provide jurisdictions with a very cost-effective way to address their road safety challenges. Next slide, please. So an example of a jurisdiction that could really benefit from asset reuse is Tasmania. And we were commissioned last year by Tasmania Police to do a demonstration on the Brooker Highway coming into Hobart. And in that demonstration, about 1 in 20 drivers were either using a phone, speeding significantly, or driving a car unregistered for more than a month, and just a handful were not wearing their seatbelts. Next slide, please. The other way that we've extended the technology is as a real-time screening tool. So a transportable solution can be parked, let's say, 100 meters ahead of a waiting police intercept vehicle that can analyze in real time drivers for distraction, speed, or license plate checks. And then the system will send forward images of the identified vehicles in seconds. So the officer can use these to pursue a traffic stop. And this is particularly relevant for jurisdictions that don't yet have enabling legislation for automated camera enforcement. By having a police officer individually pull over that vehicle, they become the primary evidence rather than the camera system itself. Next slide, please. So, and we've seen interest from around the world for this technology. It is a problem that is global and endemic. Probably something to note is Queensland Transport Main Roads is the first jurisdiction that we've worked with to deploy and evaluate seatbelt enforcement technology in their pilot program that's occurring at the moment. I'm sure many are aware that road fatality numbers are disproportionately show drivers or occupants not wearing seatbelts. So 1 in 4 fatalities roughly not wearing a seatbelt despite high compliance. We're conducting pilots across Europe, Asia, Africa, and North America, in addition to Australasia, of the distracted driving enforcement. And we do find that the distracted driving behaviour is absolutely endemic, although some jurisdictions do have greater challenges than others. So, for example, in the USA, at some locations, we may see up to 20% of drivers manipulating the phone at a given point in time and place on the network, and more typically 5%, let's say, whereas an Australian scenario is more typically before a treatment, such as the New South Wales program, it's more typically in the 2 to 3% kind of range. Next slide, please. So just turning a little bit to the learnings from our perspective, I think what we've learned from the program in New South Wales and elsewhere in the globe is that enforcement camera programs do clearly drive behavioural change, and they do work to drive change against distracted driving. We've had a great deal of success with the trailer deployment methodology, and we think that has several advantages over traditional mobile speed enforcement, where somebody drives a car and sits in the car while the solution is enforcing. And that the trailer solution enables much longer durations of deployment and removes the significant occupational health and safety risks experienced by mobile camera operators. And the other thing that we've been able to demonstrate with clients is that we can see that the same platform and technology solution can be used to address multiple road safety challenges simultaneously. And we've also now proven that the solution can be deployed to provide image data of offending drivers live via the cloud to police to assist roadside policing. Next slide, please. So thanks for your attention through this presentation. To close, for Acusensus, and we want to solve the distracted driving problem globally, first and foremost, and we think the trailer platform and the multifunctional nature of the distracted driving enforcement solution can provide significant benefits to authorities as they tackle dangerous driving behaviours. As we turn our minds to the future, one feature I'm particularly keen on developing is a drug and impaired driver screening tool for a real-time policing application. I think we have a chance here to solve another really major inadequately addressed source of road trauma, that being drug driving, and that we could take some of the randomness out of random drug testing. So thank you. Back to you.
Lovely. Thanks so much for your presentation, Alex. It's really interesting to see how passionate you are about the development of the technology, about road safety, about working towards that zero target that we talked about with Bernard's introduction, and to see some insights into what kind of things might occur in the future with those technologies. As you've both been talking, we've had various questions come through from the audience, some of which I've had a chance to read and give some priority to. Could you please pop us through to the next 2 slides, please, Isabella? So there are a couple of questions that people have asked specifically about. I'll reintroduce myself for those of you who joined late. I'm Anna Chevalier. I'm the seminar coordinator this year for the Australasian the Australasian College of Road Safety New South Wales chapter. And I'm going to run through some of those questions now with you. For those of you who joined late, there have been a few questions about will we share the slides? Will there be access to the webinar? Yes, we will share the slides, not the notes, but the slides, and there will be access to the webinar. Both of those things will be hosted on the college website, and we will send out a link to each of them. So some really engaging questions coming through. And I'll kick off with the first couple for you, Bernard. There have been some of the questions are more than one person is asking them, so I'll join them together a little bit. The first one is, how are the deployment sites selected, and are there plans to expand the number of cameras, particularly in regional New South Wales? Over to you, Bernard.
Yes, so happy to talk about that. We've been identifying locations right across the state, literally hundreds of locations where we can, from a health, work health and safety perspective and safety of other road users, deploy the transportable cameras. And so that's an ongoing situation where we're identifying locations where they can be deployed. And then we're deploying for short periods of time the cameras so that they have a anywhere, anytime sort of effect across the network. And so they do stay for, a short period of time at each of those locations, and they're moving right across the network currently. We'll be building up to having the combination of both fixed and transportable to get to that 135 million vehicles screened and having 45 cameras in place within the first 4 years of the program.
Great, thanks, Bernard. Okay, the next one is for you, Alex. How does the detection work for heavy commercial vehicles?
Thanks, Anna. The detection is pretty much the exact same process for both heavy vehicles and light vehicles. Heavy vehicles detected just the same number of vehicles detected, same images, heavy and light. So radar-based triggering, and then fire off the photo at exactly the right spot to get a clear shot through the windshield.
Thanks, Alex. Another one for you, Bernard, and there have been a couple of questions about this one too. Noting the difference in anticipated casualties prevented without overt signage as opposed to with overt signage, is there any intent to convert this concept to include the existing speed and red light cameras across the state?
Yeah, so look, no plans currently in play, but the Minister has mentioned on a number of occasions that we should continue to review all of the camera programs that we have in place. And so there's continued review that happens in comparing the programs with other best practice in other jurisdictions and from around the world. But no, nothing currently in the works to make those changes happen.
I'm just trying to keep up. There's a stream of questions coming through, and I know we have a big audience today. Thank you for that, Bernard. Here's another one for you. Well, actually, it could be for either of you, so I'll let you decide between you who answers this one. Are there ways for drivers to avoid detection? For instance, wearing black clothes, a black phone, a black steering wheel. Would the AI still just detect the mobile phone use? Perhaps it's better for you, Alex.
So sure. No, there's not. The biggest, best way to not detect mobile phone use is for the driver to not be touching a mobile phone. That's first and foremost. No, there's not really any particular pattern or any particular case that the solution cannot identify. It's probably important to recognise that there's always a human review element at the end that verifies what the AI selects.
Yeah, I suppose I'd just add that we're clearly, we're looking for clear handheld use of mobile phones, and so needing to make out the elements of the offence, that a vehicle's travelling on a road and that the person's actually using the phone at the time, and that it's clearly in the image of mobile phone. So that adjudication process by the trained authorised officer in the end will determine whether or not the image makes out the offence, and so those that don't clearly are culled.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, another one, a little bit along a similar vein. Is the drinking of beverages such as hot coffee seen as a contributor to road crashes? And could the mobile phone detection tech be used to reduce the risk? And we've had similar questions about this. There have been another couple of people who have asked about other behaviours like eating or other types of distractions. Could the cameras pick up such things? I'm not sure which of you would like to take that question.
Yeah, look, I think it's probably one for me, but again, we can make cameras pick out anything that's happening within the vehicle, clearly from what we've seen with the mobile phone camera detection program. So I think the issue here is that the legal framework that we have in place currently, there are a lot of activities that people participate in within the vehicle that actually are not part of the driving task, and not part of keeping your eyes on the road and hands on the wheel and your mind on the driving. And what the research indicates is that there are particular activities which specifically we have research information about the level of distraction. Now, clearly making a phone call and talking on the phone, if it's in a cradle, means that your mind is also on, on the conversation. But what, in law, what we've done is actually established that the level of distraction in that context is tolerable, and so it's permitted within the law currently, as are a lot of those other activities. The catch-all law that actually determines whether or not a risk is manifesting itself is that we do have a law that says if you do not have proper control of your vehicle, then you can be fined, and it has 3 demerits attached to that fine. So no matter what the activity is, the police have the capability to fine someone for not having proper control of their vehicle, regardless of what the distraction may have been within the vehicle or outside the vehicle. So there is a law that actually does regulate that. In terms of having camera detected offences for all of those other sort of activities within the vehicle, as they're not specifically prohibited, we haven't got a, we're not intending to have a camera design, program designed to address them. And so it is being left really in the legal context for police enforcement of maintaining proper control of your vehicle. Do you think that answers the question?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Bernard. Okay, here's another one. How accurate are the cameras at determining a mobile phone over another similarly sized object in or on the driver's hand, and how accurate is the officer's screening process? So in a way, we've answered that first bit, but the next bit, how accurate is the officer's screening process to not issue an infringement incorrectly, and how many are being challenged of the issued infringements?
Yeah, so look, all the officers are trained, and we constantly go through a review process where the authorised officers are both in groups, are reviewing decisions that have been made, as well as individually being trained and making sure that we're updating their, and we have guidelines for the assessment of the offence and the images. With regard to the second element, sorry, Anna, could you just repeat the second element of the question?
You bet. I'm just going back to that question. It's hard to scroll through to it. There are so many coming through.
Oh, how many are actually being referred?
Yeah, that's right. How many are being questioned?
At the moment we have, for the first 4 months of the program operating, around 800 court elects. Now those court elects may be for people who are wishing to have the penalty reduced. They may not necessarily be challenging the specifics of the offence. Some will be, and due to the delay in the courts, those matters are only just starting to filter through in August through to January currently. And the rate at which those are coming through is not significantly different to the other camera programs currently.
Okay, thank you. Here's another one for you, Bernard. Has there been any camera vandalisation? And was there another camera monitoring the camera site to deter vandals?
Actually, Alex may want to respond to the number of incidents. They'd be more aware of those currently. Just on the matters that have been to court as well, 16 matters have been finalised and they were all proven guilty.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Vandalisation, no vandalism events to date. And yes, there are cameras watching the cameras, that is true, and other security monitoring at each location.
Thank you. Okay, I have another question. So we've just got a couple of minutes left now. This question is, can you please clarify, is it legal for a fully licensed holder to have their phone sitting in the cup rest or a passenger seat if not touching it, or does it need to be in a mount at all times? And somebody else has asked us, can the mount be magnetic or does it have to be something else? Similarly, does the camera pick up for novice drivers having their phone in view on the passenger seat? And they've put in brackets, which is now illegal.
Okay, so first one, if you're using your phone only for audio, making calls via Bluetooth and you're not touching your phone, then it's not an offence. So having the phone sitting somewhere where it's actually plugged into Bluetooth and you're using it via Bluetooth and not touching your phone is not an offence. With regard to having phones sitting in particular locations where they may be identified, this camera program is specifically targeting handheld mobile phone use, and so it's not looking for any other mobile phones or devices sitting on seats in other locations. So the offence is very clear around the use of mobile phone, handheld use of mobile phones. So in the second regard, it's not being used for detecting offences for novice drivers in that way.
Okay, thank you. Do you have time to take one more question? We're right on 1:30.
Yep.
And there's lots more questions, but there is one that's been here for a while that's an interesting one. Will the camera, and I haven't managed to read them all, I must admit, so I'm sure there are other interesting ones in there too. Will the cameras be moved and targeted to respond to the evidence and data that unfolds? for instance, in locations or areas where higher illegal mobile phone use is detected?
Yeah, absolutely. We're monitoring as we move the cameras around the network, the sort of rates of compliance in different locations around the network as well. And so whilst we're doing that, we're monitoring where are there higher rates of offending taking place. And it's likely that even the fixed locations may be moved on the network depending on where we find locations where we have high volumes of traffic, where there's high levels of offending. So the answer to that is yes, it's a really agile approach to how we're trying to target the problem. We know that people are using their mobile phones right across the whole of the network illegally. It's not a city-centric thing because we're getting detection right across the whole of the state.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to you both. We have had a number of other questions come through, and we will definitely have a look at them after the webinar, but I know that you both have very kindly given us your time and also have other commitments, as do, I'm sure, our audience members. So again, thanks very much to the audience for joining us and for making this a success. Thank you so much to Isabella and Neva, who have kept us on track and working well through everything and setting everything up. Thank you to the other members of the Australasian Road Safety, College of Road Safety New South Wales chapter who have assisted with promoting, and ARB who assisted with promoting and providing this platform. And such an interesting topic. Really a joy to hear some more details about it and some insights into how this technology might be used in the future to help reduce those fatalities and injuries on our roads. Thanks very much.
Thank you.